All right. So panel number 2, why modern applications, intelligent operations, and digital workflow don't have to be high-stakes bets. So these are the other 3 pillars that are part of the pillar platform. So with us we have Chris, we have Brian, and we have Colleen. We'll go in the same order. They're right to left. Brian, why don't you go ahead and start?
Yeah. Hey everybody, I'm Brian Kennedy, our CTO, divisional CTO, part of our office of the CTO, responsible for intelligent operations. So much like you heard earlier from a couple of the panelists, I'm kind of responsible for our strategy as it relates to all things intelligent operations, which is sort of an easy way to think of that as anything that like an SRE or a NOC analyst would need to kind of be alerted to a problem and then facilitate some kind of remediation or troubleshooting.
Hi everyone, I'm Colleen Harper. I'm a senior solutions architect on the digital workflow team, so focusing on products like ServiceNow, and am very involved in the pre-sales process, which Will was talking about earlier in his keynote. So helping you guys to understand products, pick things off the shelf, and then architecting the best solutions for you.
And my name is Chris Black. I am the CTO of our modern IT operations platform. Our responsibility is day 2 through sunsetting of the operational day-to-day care and feeding of IT.
Awesome. So Brian came to us from an acquired company, right? You're the founder and CEO of Kintyre.
Yeah, I've been here since February.
We never did the years and where we came from.
Right, we missed that part. I joined CDI in February of 21 after an acquisition of a firm that I had founded in 2015 that was very kind of boutique, focused on a couple of products. Really, I knew a lot of the guys at CDI prior to that.
That's right. We had a working relationship.
We had a working relationship, so it's been great.
And Chris joined us from High Availability, which
High Availability. So Christmas Eve will be 2 years I've been with CDI. I was one of the founders of High Availability. We were a 100% managed services organization, so our engineers never left the 4 walls of our offices.
Awesome. Okay, so Brian, I'm going to start with you. So as the divisional CTO for intelligent operations, I talked a lot in the keynote about sort of like this operational chaos that's happening with cloud and ground and edge and everything in between. Like it seems like IT operations is becoming orders of magnitude more complicated. Mm-hmm. What are you seeing from your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I think complicated is one way to put it. I think another way might be to say it's becoming a lot more expensive, way too expensive. I think if we most customers that I talk to, and if I just ask a simple question of like, how much of your budget are you really spending on kind of keeping the lights on and running the steady state, versus innovating and kind of really finding new ways to market, the percentages are still way too far on kind of operations and keeping things, the lights on. I think even in the last panel, particularly around security, you heard some of the same themes that I'm seeing across the board, that there's way too much fragmentation. We've brought in bespoke tools and solutions for all different kinds of things that organizations have tried to do. And now we're over-invested in, some cases, a customer we were working with recently in kind of the media business thought that they had about 20 or so tools involved in operations. We got in and really kind of rolled up our sleeves, started doing some work with them. We found 72 tools that they were using that are involved in sort of their operational support process. So that's pretty hard and complex to optimize. So yeah, the fragmentation, sort of overspend, is where it all starts to achieve kind of better SLA performance, reduced MTTR, those kinds of things that people care about in operations. So we're seeing kind of a lot of consideration around consolidation to platforms like you heard Rob talking about.
So first of all, I'm curious, customers in the room, do you feel like you have like too many tools, just the right amount of tools? There's at least one honest person in the audience. Thank you, Jill. We hear this all the time. Like we talk with customers all the time, and it's a constant complaint. So how do we help customers with that? I sort of teased the tools rationalization concept. Why don't you dig into that a little more?
Yeah, I mean, we have a kind of advisory methodology within our professional services team that generally, whether we're talking security or intelligent operations or some of the things in the modern applications portfolio, where we're going to really dig beyond the surface and look at what the current state is. and then try to take all of that, series of interviews, et cetera, workshops, to develop some kind of a roadmap and a strategy about how you can improve the sort of state of affairs. So in that customer that I was referencing, that 72 tools, I mean, we're bringing them down to 4. We're consolidating down to 4 vendors from those 72. So, and there's real economic benefit to that. In this case, I mean, I think we're probably going to end up saving 25% of kind of recurring spend just on the tools itself. And when you start to do the sort of economic analysis on, well, like how much easier is it going to be for our people to do their jobs? You know, how much better SLA kind of management are we going to have with our partners that directly affects revenue and things like that? The economic justification.
At that point, though, that's
is
all
enormous.
gravy, right? Because you're already spinning a positive ROI with just the tools themselves. Is there such a thing as a single solution that solves this problem, or what's your perspective there? We hear the desire for that, but how real is that?
I don't know for most customers. I mean, certainly customers who are in, like, let's say the Fortune 2000. I don't know that they were ever going to get to a single platform, but there's certainly no need for 72 either.
Yeah.
So, you know, but if you look at what, like, the big players in this space are doing, I mean, even ones in this room, and we have Cisco, VMware, Splunk. You know, I'm sure I'm not thinking of others. They've all gone out and acquired pieces of the observability kind of solution to give you that sort of full stack. I can see everything in my environment, what's going on, what depends on each other, you know, what's going to be the impact of some sort of you know, small outage, like what does that really mean to the entire ecosystem? So the idea of, like, portfolios of observability tools or monitoring tools and ease of kind of troubleshooting and getting to the details to really understand the root cause of the problem. You know, that's a trend in the industry, and I think it makes a lot of sense.
So you just used the word observability a couple of times.
So I got a question for you, Brian, and we'll go a little bit off script here, so I'm going to apologize.
We never talk about observability.
Yeah, we did
Chris
not
never
talk about
goes
this
off
ahead of
script,
time,
ever.
but I'm going to bring it up anyway, right? So there is a difference in, you know, organizations that are monitoring their infrastructure and organizations that have observability of their platforms and what they're doing, right? And there is a, you know, for my definition, it is understanding the effect of the effect in the environment gives me observability as to what's happening from an application level all the way down through the infrastructure, and whether or not that's on-prem in a private cloud and public cloud and a SaaS type application. And understanding those interdependencies between them allows me to reduce the operational inefficiencies in troubleshooting, right? It's the elimination of what I refer to as the mean time to innocence. Right? Every organization gets on those RCA calls, and the first thing they do is, it's the network's fault, because we always blame the network, right? Once they prove their innocence, then it's the database's fault. Once they prove their innocence, then we move on to the next group. So, you know, having that full stack observability eliminates that mean time to innocence problem, so we can initially jump in and start troubleshooting.
It's good point.
And I said there was a question there, but there really wasn't. I just wanted to get that out.
So,
We've
Colleen,
been talking about observability a lot. Like, what does it really mean, and how does it compare to what we traditionally sell as monitoring?
Right.
You know,
so I want to shift direction. Actually, before I shift directions, customer questions. I want to make sure we get those. Kyle.
The example you used before, we went from 74 to 4 tools. You made the comment that, yeah, there was a significant
Hold the mic closer to your
financial
mouth.
savings there, right? They must be sacrificing something, right? You made the comment, single tool. Rob Owen's talking about multiple point solutions versus a platform. What are they sacrificing in that?
I mean, I think there's some
Ego.
really super niche stuff in that list of 72. Where, yeah, I mean, there might be some small sacrifices. Let's say something around a very particular way that, like, the network is being monitored, right? But when we looked at those things, it made sense, because even if it wasn't an apples to apples comparison, like, they'd be giving up some very deep view into a particular component, it was agreed upon that we were going to see enough of that component, and we had more complete of a picture that basically we didn't need that extra level of detail. The other thing, one last thing, Kyle, that when you were first asking the question, I thought you might go to is, it's important to be cognizant that there's a switching cost to this, right? So it's not like, oh, I can say, hey, you have these 72 things, you can replace it with these 4 things, and that overnight, or even within a couple months, we're going to get rid of those 72 things and replace. It's way too important to do that. So there's definitely a switching cost, and we looked at it 5 to 7 years type ROI to make sure that the economics made sense.
And just to add on to that, you have 10 tools and you're using 10% of each one of them. And one of the tools can handle 80% of what you're trying to observe, and you keep the other 2 to fill in that last 20%. Right. So you go from 10 down to 3.
It's a good
That's
point.
the most common I see.
In this example, I said we're going down to 4. Two of them were already in the environment. They're just going to be expanded.
There would be expanded investment with 2 of the remaining 4, and then elimination of others that had duplicate capability. So you're not just eliminating. You're maybe eliminating, but then increasing investment with existing tools to cover the deltas for what you eliminated, right? Colleen, let's get you into the mix here. So we talk a lot about the people problem, whether it's IT operations or infrastructure or architecture or cloud or development. We've seen this a lot in ServiceNow specifically, so it's an area that you focus on a lot. Can you talk a little bit about next gen, what it is, why we're doing what we're doing there, and how it's beneficial to customers, just to start the conversation, and then you guys can chime in.
Yeah, sure. So as you guys heard Will mention earlier, ServiceNow is a tool that was evolved to help eliminate manual work, right? It's bringing digital workflows into the mix. And we see a lot of enterprise software today that's doing similar things, right? And so enterprise software is no longer just a trend, right? It's a necessity. And what comes with that is challenges and people challenges, internally staffing people to manage those platforms and maintain those platforms, right? When you think about your project teams that are assigned to help facilitate the implementation of, let's say, ServiceNow, oftentimes they're coming in and it's not their day-to-day job, it's not going to be their primary job to manage ServiceNow afterwards, right? Their job is to come in, get this project rolled out as efficiently as possible so that they can move on to the next project, right? Their responsibility isn't to think about the long term or the longevity of the product, or are we consuming all of our licenses? Or to your guys' point earlier, are there other products that we could get rid of and use ServiceNow for? So when you think about that, there's also a lot of things that can go wrong with and after the project deployment, right? Once it goes live, it just kind of lies flat. And if you don't have a dedicated team in there continuously learning about the product, it can just become a really expensive ticketing tool, right? I had a customer that I met with earlier this week. They were talking about how they purchased ServiceNow. They had their customer service management module, and with that, they also had the internal IT service management module. They rolled out customer service management. It's working well. I had some opinions on how it could be better, right? But what was really interesting to me was their ITSM tool. They had a team internally that set up and configured incident, problem, change, and request to serve their employees. And it sat in their development environment because they didn't have the internal resources to push it through to production. And it's been there for 2 years. So they have a tool that's sitting there and fully functional that could be utilized, and it's sitting in a dev environment, right? And that's really shelf life. And they also have 2 other tools externally that they're paying for to manage employee requests. So that's where CDI kind of enters the chat, right? We 3 years ago rolled out our next gen managed services, which is an outcome-based managed service. And the way that we like to think about it is we become an extension of your team, right? We have the experts that are staying up to date with the product, because in addition to resources that you're staffing internally being expensive, right? These guys are not a dime a dozen, these ServiceNow specific people. they also need to continuously learn about the evolution of the product. What are the new features that are coming out? What's changing? What modules are being added that we could potentially sunset other products for? So our ServiceNow, our next gen module helps to kind of supplement your team, become an extension of your team, and really focus on ServiceNow and allow your employees to focus on their day-to-day jobs.
Yeah, it's great, and I think one of the interesting sort of criteria, and we've seen this model be successful with ServiceNow. We've since replicated it with other platforms like Salesforce. We have a next gen for DevOps product that we've been selling, and the theme is sort of the same. I mean, a ServiceNow project or a Salesforce project, those projects done right, they're not really projects. They're called platforms for a reason, right? Mm-hmm. They require continual development and care and feeding and evolution. And so from a consulting perspective, you're never really done working on that platform, right? And so that's why, like, we could do a project and write a SAO, but then when you're done with the SAO, it's like, okay, well, what's the next one? And you lose all this time that you could be making progress and adding value.
Yeah, the running joke that I make is I've never heard of one person that's ever worked in IT that's woken up and went, I'm done. Like, oh my God, I finished the list. Like, nobody's gonna call me today. We've gotten every project done. No, because the business is continuously evolving. The business is continuously changing and growing, right? And the model that they have in place for the next gen is to mirror that for configurations and changes within the platform itself to marry up to the changes going on into the business.
Yeah, and I also think that it catches on quickly, right? When you see that one team is driving a lot of value or they're getting things done faster because of this mystery tool, it's like, hey, how can I get a piece of that? Like, and then suddenly you're getting requests from employees like, can we create a service catalog item for our team?
Right.
Because we need a ticketing tool. And that list grows, and if you don't have the resources internally to help knock those items off, then it just sits there.
Awesome. Any more customer questions?
Be very generous with the chips.
You didn't get a chip?
Any more client questions? Come on, raise your hands. Observability, operations, something you're struggling with?
We all know observability and operations is the most exciting part of IT.
Ben's got a question.
So what functions should never be outsourced?
What function should never be outsourced?
Within IT.
Sure.
Yeah.
Everyone who's in this room. No. It's kind of funny because I have a lot of conversations with organizations around what platforms, what should they outsource, what should they work with a partner on, what should they move to a private data center, what should they keep on-prem, what should they move to the hybrid cloud, right? And it's the same conversation with a different parameter around it. Is it core to your business, right? If it's core to your business, you want to be driving innovation around it, then you should probably own it. If it is ancillary or supporting service, keeping the VMware infrastructure up to date does not help the manufacturing facility in central Pennsylvania create picks and shovels for a living. So, I always look at it and say, if it's core to the business, you want to have the staff in-house and you want to augment with experts and specialities. And if it's not core to the business, then allow somebody else to take care of that day-to-day care and feeding operations of IT.
If I could add to it, I think core is a good word. I think unique is another good word.
Yeah.
So, when I think about the typical kind of functions within an IT organization, if I were in a CIO position, I think the last thing that I would ever outsource is like my sort of solution development or application development, creating custom kind of digital products that my customers will experience. That my partners will experience. I think you want to build up that business kind of know-how inside the company and train that over a long period of time and let them see sort of the evolution. I think there's another element to the question, Ben. It's like maybe as you're outsourcing different things, I would caution people to be careful about sort of choosing what parts are outsourced strategically to the right parts. so that essentially you don't end up with a situation where, like I like to refer to it as the fox guarding the hen house kind of thing. So for example, when like Felix and I talk about security operations use cases, a concept of a SOC as a service, like that's a good example of where it's I think strategically important to have one person kind of running the operations and another person sort of deploying the defenses. You don't want to kind of mix those two things because everybody basically gets too comfortable. You're not keeping an eye on each other.
Reminds me of there's a saying out there. It's like build, and the whole like build versus buy paradigm that we've been talking about forever in IT anyway. It's like build what differentiates you and buy what doesn't, right? I could sort of think of it like that. That came to my mind when you asked that question. Anything highly differentiated or like totally strategic, it doesn't mean you can't outsource pieces of it or pieces of the execution, but the strategy you probably want to hold close.
Yeah, one of our clients, it's one of my favorite quotes that he ever said about CDI's managed services, our MITO division, is we have given him the opportunity to elevate IT within his organization. Because he's no longer focused in on, are the backups running, are the patches done, is the at the next version, are we taking care of the day-to-day care and feeding items? He has the opportunity to elevate IT within his organization. Whether he does or he doesn't, I can help him, but he's got to do that in the business itself.
Yeah, the word that came to mind was your innovators. I don't think that your innovators within the business should be outsourced, right? They know your business the best. If they have the time to think about how to expand and innovate internally, whether that's creating a new product or a new service, those are the people that you should be focused on keeping. It's always great to have outside opinion, but your innovators should be the ones you're protecting and not outsourcing, I think.
I think if you think back to the keynote and when Will was talking about our modern applications, sort of empower the developer. Right, and Will mentioned that we've at times dabbled in sort of software development, software engineering for our customers in terms of, we do coding and programming all the time, but more things like infrastructure as code, platforms as code, CI/CD pipelines, that kind of thing. But in terms of building that core business applications, like hardcore software engineering, there's a reason why CDI is not like heavily invested in that business, because it's really hard. You have to become verticalized. All the companies inside, have their own unique strategy. It's a very, very hard thing to do, and it's a big reason why we're not, bigger in that space. We want to empower those people as opposed to try to outsource that.
Yeah, we really, as far as we really don't have any plans to change that either. Right? Like we're going to continue to invest in enabling those types of functions, but that's not something we're going to take on. We're not going to turn into a software development house overnight. That's just not, it's not who we are. We want to be enablers to make those that choose to do that successful. Last call, any questions? Any more? No? Okay, we'll wrap there. We're going to take a 15-minute break, and then we're going to bring up our customer panel after this. Brian, Colleen, Chris, thank you very much. Appreciate it.